This six-letter N-word recalls the naders of race relations across many a nation. Leaving the six-letter N-word in its current state of use and expecting anything productive would be naiver than the average newbie to physics attempting to calculate each Newton exerted by a nebula 90 light years away by counting how many hairs they are in the least nastic leaf of a nettle. Is treating it as a nicety between some and pretending that all others hearing it should maintain the general disposition of a content nipper, anything other than gazing into our navels? Are we like knackered mollusks, receding into shells under the notion that avoidance can become the new normal? Just maintain this environment where anyone naming the issue will be nailed with accusations from that of being a nagger to much worse, since there is no nuance to be had, and any noetic discussion of the use of the six-letter N-word should be nailed. Is it in our nature to neatly sidestep such an issue due to the sensitivities of those that demand to be nursed? Censoring the new editions of novels by claiming there is not even a narrow line between reliving history and taking the steps to learn from it has in no way done anything to negate the harm caused by the six-letter N-word. Attempts to neuter its usage serve to nestle it deeper into our consciousness as an evil from the netherrealm, its mere suggestion affecting people on a neural level, leaving them necked and more brittle than the finest angel's hair noodle left out to dry in an arid desert. Those actions infuse it with a power making it roar to life, like an engine as nitros are fired into it, and gives it a prominence similar to that these very same cars would, racing through clear nights with the six-letter N-word written on them in large neon letters. So potent it is that its mere mention can be like a figurative napalm drop to the most civil of conversations, creating situations where the six-letter N-word must be expertly danced around, like someone was performing the most elaborate notch, keeping it as a word that should not even be thought. Ignore it as we may, it remains latent, floating nearby in our collective conscience. In its current form, it proves to be a source of life-sustaining nectar for the race baiters that flit around like nymphs, content to nibble away at the threads that hold us together, when not otherwise corroding the foundations of civility. Like a potent nitric acid, they nicely join in with others, nimbly sifting through even the most innocuous matter like some villainous notary, trying to find that needle in a haystack that they can use to pop the balloons full of nausea-inducing accusations and assertions that they always have with them, gladly embracing the newest excuse that they can use to demand people sacrifice and pay tributes that they can then use to reinforce the noggin pantheon they have built for the noumena of their hateful religion. Hate, as you may know, can be harnessed to many causes, obliteration being one of its most common uses. This faith has them ready to send navies equipped with the most advanced navaid, slicing through the waters with the ease of a nekton of expert naiads, firing the right noises at anyone or thing that they can Nazify. When no obvious target is to be found, they wait eagerly with arrows nocked, ready to let loose at the slightest reason to be narked. Like Nimrod would while tracking a Nilgai Bak in central India, one of the Nyalas in Southeast Africa, or a wee little Numbat in Western Australia, these arrows are intended to draw blood. This tactical nuking often comes with no plan to notify the target, because after all, educate yourself. It is no wise their job to evangelize for their religion. We're not methodically spreading their gospel by hypothetical or actual swords. They are content to nuzzle themselves into preferential positions in whatever niches they have made for themselves. Once nested in position, they proceed to nickel and dime their marks, at times with the stealthy accuracy of the best trained ninjas, but all the time for resources to be noshed on like a tasty nougat. Despite this habit of picking at Newton fruit, the adherents of this religion take on a position of moral superiority that sets themselves up as nobles, or better yet, a visiting nuncio looking down on us uneducated peasants. It is their nomism. This state of affairs has falsely led many to think it is neater to just let them have their way. I am no nitwit, so forget the absurd claim that I am saying nobody uses the six-letter N-word with intention to harm. But is the ill intention behind the use of the six-letter N-word part of the main reason that certain people get nabbed at the rates that they do after dealings with narcos? No. We have come a long way from when a male of Nubian descent would be literally noosed following this simple accusation from a maiden of Nordic descent. I am saying that in the current reality, depending on who you think said the six-letter N-word matters more than what was intended to be said. For example, imagine a stereotypically heterosexual male. He's out with some friends at a local brothel and has a noggin or nine. He leaves his friends at the bar on the main floor and makes his way upstairs, and walks into a dimly lit room arrayed with several scented candles made of quality narrows. As he stumbles toward the table in the center of the room with a bowl full of nutted fruits, he takes notice of some movement. He looks over, and from behind a curtain of the finest linen, he sees a svelte but shapely silhouette. A voice of musical falsetto sweetly asks him to close his eyes and then prompts him to ask any questions he may see fit. As the voice answers his questions, the man begins noting every detail given. Using this information, he begins to create an image that the voice must belong to the most nubile person he can imagine. This voice describes that they are wearing the most tasteful nightie with just the right amount of suggested nudity. Imagine this. After being asked by the voice, that for some time has been slowly coming nearer, if he'd like to open his eyes to see who spoke, he nodded vigorously with his expectations on the ninth nimbus. The figure possessing this captivating voice has stopped close enough to the man that he can feel the warmth emanating from their body. The Narian simulation is increased as the man takes in the welcome scent from the perfume of neroli infused with a faint scent of nutmeg. The man then feels the dainty hand of the figure grasp his wrist, and he is sure that this must be a Nereid come out of legends of old. The slender fingers on the free hand of this hopefully soon-to-be paramour touch the bottom of the man's palm. They confidently open his closed fist, and they slowly raise and guide his hand until some of his fingertips are lightly touching the nylons stretched taut over an erect nipple. Prompted, he opens his eyes. Instead of the refreshing beauty he'd envisioned, he sees a man who slyly winks at him, blows a kiss as he nances away. A change comes over the man. He was once full of internal enthusiastic neighs of a stud stallion, and now hangs his head and lets out a downtrodden nicker. If this was his only reaction, this would be one of the nicest things you can expect after this. So sure, we all have chests, but depending on whose body it is and what situation you're in, that feeling of touching one can go from one that neared ecstasy to the feeling that you would have after just touching some nubbly appendage that can be treated as you would any numbed or noticed inanimate object. This situation is not dissimilar from when someone in a nittery would be loudly reciting certain lyrics in a song that they enjoy, only to come across that six-letter N-word and realize that they're not alone in their shower. I would like to see the word become as valuable to those that profit from its negative use as Nyara's would be to the nomads in the middle of Siberia. To do this, we must identify the nuclei of the issue, find the important nugget worth focusing on, and do so. If claims of a native racism are branded to certain groups like a visible and unchangeable naivus, or like a niello engraved into an ornate dagger, then once somebody has been liberally sprayed by this marking from the nozzle of shame, it is then used as an excuse to be nicked for the most arbitrary of reasons. This is often done by referring to generations-old evils that the accused and the accuser had no ways of imposing or experiencing. Both sides nonetheless nutate obediently at the utterance of the illicit use of this word. We cannot hope to neaten the mess that this word is by covering it with a napkin or any number of napery. Our best hope in nixing its negative power is to be consistent in how we treat it. This is how a solution can be netted. Ask yourself, how would you explain this to somebody in their nonage? How would Niseis explain the word to their nieces, calling them from Japan? How would I, as an uncle, explain the word to my nephew during a trip back to Nairobi? If the word is so nascent that it automatically places our ability to think rationally in a full Nelson, then perhaps everyone should stop using it. Keeping it exclusive to certain groups only reinforces the newels that race baiters use on their staircases to the bottom. It is their hope that the threat of constant scandals being noised will leave us mostly numb to their tactic of using one thing or another to create nonsense that they will then use to control your behavior and take you for all that you are worth. They may not try to prick you with nopals or break your bones with a large norite, but their sort of novena to victimhood can still harm you. Despite all this, we are still at a non-war. Challenge them to provide evidence for their opinion of the use of the rod. Ensure that they have as solid a grip on the issue as you would on a knurled handle. A simple question of what do you mean by X is enough to render their attack nulled and expose them as a nudnik they often are. They have grown used to making this accusation, and it resulting in a noyad of sorts from a steady heap of buckets, as if from a carefully maintained set of norias. If this quick and sudden end does not occur, They at least expect the toxic nostoc in the water to have left their victims so riddled with guilt-inducing shame that they can only fall numbly before them, laying there prone, with their neutral ligament exposed, waiting at the mercy of the executioner blade that they gleefully wield. As such, they tend to wear their offense like a wealthy Egyptian woman trying on nubias at an apparel store, expecting every attendant to say that they look grand in them. Their claims hardly have any cardinal point. All their norths are towards the paths of least resistance, and though they may be nimble in jumping from one to another, keep asking them what they mean and they will tire out. They are powered by NICADs though, so they are capable of recharging after taking that initial L. The increased ability to counter their narrative is a newish thing, and you have been called upon as a non-com. The six-letter N-word remains a potent and emotional thing, and continues to be used by those who claim to own it. But in order to find its accurate place in the non-ego, it deserves to be subject to a rigorous noesis. As I come to the end of this, I realize that some of you may consider all of this to be just an elaborate and pointless niggle. But as I mentioned in a previous video about one of the few times that the six-letter N-word ever offended me, that time it was more about the loudness and lack of friendship in the nutter that yelled it out than anything in the nounal or nudist definition of the word itself. They may as well have yelled out something like, "Hey, here are some nachos," and that would have surprised me in its own odd way. I would likely still have eaten it, if only to give all the niacin in my body some cholesterol to level out. And I'm also realizing this is ending on a nala of sorts. So anyway, you can go ahead and be a Nelly about my usage of certain terms and words in this post or in this video. But that's a whole lot of six-letter N-words that you don't really think about when somebody says the N-word. So let me ask you something. That last six-letter N-word I used, is it as offensive to the people group that it's used to mock, homosexuals and gay people, as the initial six-letter N-word I referred to is to its group, African Americans, blacks, and the like? While listening to this, how many times do you think of the six-letter N-word that I did not use? What percentage of the time were you expecting me to use it? What if I told you that that is indicative of how racist that you are? What if I told you were racist for not thinking it enough, or not thinking it at all? What if it did not matter, and you were only racist if you actually are racist? So that's the end of this. I kind of thought of writing this when I did those two videos of black privilege and black oppression in one word. And for both of them, I just recorded me saying the six-letter N-word. And in one word, I used the slang version with GGA, and the other one I used GGER. I don't even know if people are going to tell the difference in which ones I used the different words in, but that was kind of to show that even how it's said is kind of a different thing. Like, I used the privilege for, I think it was GGER, and then the oppression for GGA, even though that's a kind of situation where they say, okay, in these groups we can say GGA, and when you say GGER, which is written in the books, that's the stuff that we got to take out. But regardless, I was thinking about when people say the N-word. You know, it's like, what do people normally mean when they say the N-word? So I kind of went and looked and see how many actual six-letter N-words are there. And then I found this entire list. I think it was something like 200 or something. But I think I included maybe, I don't know, I included a couple of hundred. I mean, at least 100 in this video. Just wanted to see if I can make something out of it and kind of talk about the ridiculous nature, or what I consider to be somewhat of a ridiculous nature, of how this word is used. And I know words in the English language change, and the times when this word actually had a lot of potent negative effect weren't too long ago when you think of just human history in general. But I look forward to the time when this word doesn't have any of the, at least anywhere close to the strong and negative abilities that it has now. I would rather people just be able to use it, and then you have to deal with the consequences of you using that word, not have it to be taboo for an entire group of people. And this is how it is with a lot of words. You can say, I love you to somebody, and if it's in the wrong context, that can lead to some negative reactions. Like you say you love something that's terrible, or let's say you say you love somebody and they don't necessarily love you back. That could lead to something negative, even though the word love itself, or that emotion itself, is in general a positive thing. So yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know. Like, share, and subscribe. I might leave links below to the list of these words that I found, which you can actually go in there and type and find other lettered words for a lot of other things, which is a cool thing about the internet, access to information. But yeah, links below. There'll be links below to the store. I'm selling some merch there to kind of support this channel and kind of make something out of this outside of just creating content. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Till next video, goodbye.